Hi everyone, Himanshu joining you. Hi, Sudipto. Am I audible or?
Yes, we can hear you. We can see you as well. But I think they have asked us to put us on mute.
Okay.
Yeah, and they will call us when to start.
Sure.
Yes.
Thanks. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to 19th Inflection Pharma Supply Chain and Cold Chain Expo and Awards 2020. I am Namrata Kumaya from Team Audin Global. I will be the host for the day and navigate you through interesting keynotes and panel discussions. Inflection is a series of Expo, web conferences and awards and offline conferences across Delhi, Mumbai, and Bangalore. Today, we are here to gain insights and celebrate success and innovation in pharma and cold supply chain. The top leaders of the countries will be sharing their thoughts and will be a part of panel discussions. The theme of today's conference is driving value, delivering cost efficiency and productivity in pharma and cold chain. Today, 400 plus attendees have registered to gain insights from top leaders. Now, let's start the e-expo with some interesting keynotes and panel discussion. Here I call Mr. Amit Garg, founder and chief scientist, to express his views on optimization and analytics in resilient supply chains for pharma and cold chain.
Can I share my screen? Yeah, it won't allow. Yes, today I'll be speaking on optimization and analytics in resilient supply chain for pharma and cold chain. I worked for a decade in this optimization and data science in the US, as well as running my own company for last 4 years. So we do a lot of different optimization work and in the areas of data science. So now coming to the pharmaceutical, but what are the things we can do? The first thing should be where is the scope for improvement. Then quantifying the parameter. What is the process we go through in this? Where is the scope for improvement, where the challenge exists. Quantifying the parameter, ways to measure the things and defining KPIs to assess the improvement. And then optimization techniques. Some of them are like a resource allocation, assignments and scheduling, up-to-date optimal inventory model, logistics optimization, others which can be modeled as mathematical problems. So supplier selection for APIs. So once you have qualified suppliers are shortlisted, optimization tool can be used to arrive at an optimal set of suppliers subjected to multiple conditions like different geographies, total number of suppliers to arrive at total procurement, lowest procurement cost. And if you see particularly in this COVID time, these are some of the very important problems because the medicine requirement were changing quite abruptly. Increased competition from generic drugs, lead to cost reduction in the drug making, thus requirement for efficient ways to reduce production cost is even more important. And post COVID-19, restrictions on count of employees and restrictions on max size of crowds lead us to efficient ways for resource allocation and resource scheduling. Inventory management and different SLOs. Why is it so general principle of inventory optimization, some of you might have already heard and those, but then in the case of medicines you have to look at the expiration date. Medicines are expiring a different date, so if you keep medicine stocks, medicine as well as cold chain product mostly, so if you keep it for significant period, you have a problem of expiration as well. If you give too less, there's a huge source supply cost. Because so lead times for different SKUs, demand uncertainty, particularly like the way the COVID number were changing. I'll be showing you some of the use cases. Basically, the way COVID number were changing, it was very difficult to forecast accurately, even at a reasonable level, not just like a 10 or 20% error. So requirement of large inventory of in few cases, deordering level, order quantity, and I'll be going into some of the use cases soon. So optimal routing for agile cold chains. So preservation of adequate storage and handling conditions, packaging sequence as per preference, reducing number of movement required in the whole route plan, loading and unloading issues coming, temperature study and feedback with machine learning applications. So a surveillance and anomaly detection for predicting upcoming failures, maintenance schedule of air conditioned systems. So let me now go through some of the use cases on this. We recently we're working with a company which basically trying to figure out the COVID labs and data is being, how do we have for COVID cases the sampling is done most efficiently, and how do we observe where are the concern level? How can we make it more efficient operation? So you look at the overall visibility, visualizing the KPIs of the lab across the country. It's one of the Middle East country where we were working on, visualizing the COVID statistics across the country by demographic, filter and sort KPIs, lab level visibility. You might like to leave how different labs are doing in the country. Logistics KPI. Is it the basically inefficiency coming because of the lab? Is it coming because of the logistics side? Resource level KPI. Are all the resources used efficiently? So basically, so here you look at the total number of swabs. These are the swabs taken, overall productivity, sample productivity, application productivity, and this is basically for Saudi, the map where you're looking at the different locations, which are the major ones, which are the minor hub. These are the test overview at a high level. Let's continue. So analytics dashboard. So one is the functionality. You're trying to figure out by the region, lab, resources. So first part is we are working on visibility here. Where is the concern area? Where can we make a further improvement in the lab in some of these testing? So total COVID test in, successful test, what are the failed tests, where are the delay happening? And these delays and those could happen because of the lab turnaround time, could also happen because of logistics turnaround time. So lab turnaround time you make in orange color, and the logistics related you put it in another color, so that you can get a more clear visibility. Then across lab you can see maybe one lab is working more efficiently than another lab. What might be the reasons? So now coming to lab KPI screens, basically each of the lab, how are they doing? What are the things which, how can we make it more efficient and logistic and this? Then you look at the resource KPI at individual resource level. Are the machines sufficiently productive? If there are 3 types of machines used, what is the productivity level of each of the machine? What is the productive level of the people involved? So those can be observed. So here you are visualizing the machine throughput per hour, understanding the resource productivity at a day on an hourly level. So setting the threshold and identifying any productivity anomalies, So this helps the user understand any loss in the productivity over a period of time, identifying bottleneck in supply of the machines, So now I'll take you to another completely different case, basically on the inventory optimization, multi-SL inventory optimization, where you have inventory maintained at different levels. So you're trying to, we had this client is basically from Europe side. So they have 1,500 suppliers across Europe who supply. So you're trying to take stuff from your supplier. You want to figure out where do you want to maintain your inventory, because in the different parts of Europe, the cost will be different. Where do you maintain your inventory? What do you manufacture yourself? And what do you take it from third party? A combination of that, so that you can meet your demand level. So there are different echelon where you need to figure out where to maintain inventory, where you are taking those suppliers, and to ensure that your demands can be met throughout the year. So these are the kind of things we were doing. Corona analyzer. We were also trying to figure out the pattern of this COVID, how the things had been going on, kind of. What kind of trend can you expect? Agree, like exactly figuring out when COVID will settle is a very, very difficult question to answer, basically. But what the data is showing, can we identify some pattern? And some patterns were identified. I agree. The exact date, right now the expectation obviously, we might expect that, yes, it would settle down by January of 2000. Let's say, will it settle by October to 2020 or those? But pattern identification, that was something we worked on, and we also have a tool online. So let me also show you another thing which I wanted to show. Yes. So this was another one where we were building a dashboard for the purpose of how much is the inventory in different labs, labs around the country. So there are labs of different medicines which are there. So you have a total hand holding inventory out of stock count. 1 second. Screen. Just time to take it. I think that's it. So what are the low inventory item? Because if you know these are my low inventory item, I can do something about it. You can click I, you will see which are my low inventory item. So whatever I'm explaining here is just a simple dashboarding tool, starting with, which can give you clear visibility, could be a starting point to see how do I run my office, and then taking an analytics or optimization approach, So one can then go across the different labs and see what the numbers are. Let's say here. Yeah, sorry, you go here. So you can basically update the level, and once you do that, so I think I have to just play. It's basically, this is a wireframe to basically show what we are trying to accomplish. So here then you can go to the stock order level. What are my order level? When do I need to place the order? So these things can be interconnected, and this could be like a easy tool for somebody who knows what are my inventory level, where is the inventory concern, what amount do I need to order, and when do I order. So these whole things can be interconnected, which helps person basically manage where the concern level are, how do I address them. Yeah. So this is what I wanted to share. Thank you very much. If anybody has any question at this point.
Hi, Amit. There is a question from Vishal Jain. He wants to know what is the new which is happening in data science in pharma supply chain.
Right now, anyway, with the COVID, the challenges which have been put across, one is first of all not only new. So some technique might be old one. Let's say forecasting has been an old approach. How do we forecast the requirement of beds, requirement of medicines? This was a very extremely pain point in the last couple of months. We've been working with some of the clients, and the challenges are because any of the general forecasting approaches which will not be applied because you don't have sufficient data here. So that was one challenge which is happening. Second is with the COVID, it also created the distance which need to be maintained across people, So when they're entering the certain areas and those, how do we minimize the risk, both in the pharmaceutical sector, healthcare, how do we minimize this risk factor? So can the images which are taken, basically, so the devices which are made pharmaceutical, so how do we ensure that we can use this data science technologies right now to ensure that this can be minimized for the public? So this was one, some of the factors we have seen. Other than that, I will say the role of blockchain is something which is in quite high demand, because sometimes the medicines which are, let's say medicine which came from one area and it reached the final place. How did it come through? Can we trust that the temperature, pressure, those are maintained properly? These are some of the things basically. So I will say it's more onto the implementation side. Technology might be there for last at least few years, maybe I would say 3-4 years. But how do we get into practice and actually make it usable for the mankind?
There is one more question from Nidhi. She wants to understand how you are helping supply chains to be resilient in this COVID times.
Yeah, so some of the challenges supply chain faced right now in COVID time is for e-commerce industry, the demand went up quite a bit, basically. And at the same time, you have limited number of people which can work on the warehouse because the risk factor are high. You need to maintain the 2-meter distance. So the company would never consider that they will even be outsourcing. They also have to depend on other companies as well to make sure that they can finally deliver their promises. So the optimization data science approach, they enabled companies to see, I will not be able to meet this requirement. As the requirements are changing, you can know ahead of time. I'll be running out of stock. Yes, I need to connect to more suppliers. I need to be able to, so if you can know things ahead of time as the orders are coming, yes, I'll not be able to meet this, then you can accordingly adjust it. So with the right kind of forecast, with the right kind of, and when there'll be system disturbance, because company who had 10 suppliers, they had to now connect to 20 suppliers. Because another thing is, at any point of time, any supplier might become unavailable because of COVID. Like in Dubai and Abu Dhabi, previously movement was free. Now there is a restrictions, and same thing in India. If you see, if you want to go out of Bangalore, many times the restrictions are put by the government. So which also makes sure that, if you are not connected to local supplier, you will have a problem, both in cold chain as well as pharmaceutical side. Did I address the point or anything else, Sandeep?
Yeah, thank you. These were the 2 questions.
Thank you.
Thank you, Amit, for such a great discussion. Now, here's the another lead talk by Mr. Nikhil Surve, Associate Director of R3, to express his views on future of blockchain in pharma.
Hey, hi everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, Nikhil.
Okay, perfect. So hi, good evening, everyone. This is Nikhil Surve. I am with R3, working as Associate Director and Partnership Lead in the Asia and South Asia, India and South Asia region. First of all, thanks to Alden to invite me here. I'm happy to spend a few minutes with the team over here to talk about what we see as the blockchain play in pharmaceutical industry. I think very happy with how Amit also mentioned blockchain being one of the technologies that are now being looked at more from a data and from a trust perspective. Give me a moment where I share my screen. Okay. Is my screen visible as well?
Yes, Nikhil.
Okay, perfect. Cool. So before starting off, a very brief introduction of who we are. I'm from R3. We are a global blockchain platform company, majorly focused on enterprise side of blockchain. So we don't play in the crypto space. We are more than 5 years old, but what is interesting about us is we have already built a huge ecosystem of more than 400 companies, and these include financial institutions, regulators, professional services firms, and even tech companies such as SIs and ISVs, which is basically product companies. There's few numbers over here, but basically what I wanted to bring out here is we are the leaders in the blockchain space, have been awarded multiple times on various forums, have got a very good list of clients. I would be honest, predominantly in the FS space, but also expanding beyond the financial services space. In India, we have got a presence. We are expanding the team in India as well. So the company is R3. What we have done is we have built a blockchain platform, which is purely for enterprises like pharmaceutical companies. And the platform is called Corda. So you will hear a lot of Corda from me in next 15, 20 minutes. But basically, this is the platform that we have built. So if I have to give you a analogy, think of us as maybe Microsoft and Windows being the operating system. So the exact analogy stands for us. So we are the company who has built the blockchain platform called Corda. And then this platform is being used by a lot of corporates as well as our partners to build solutions on top of it. Moving on, I think I've got 20 minutes today. This is a fairly long list to cover in 20 minutes, but what I wanted to do today is basically give you a flavor of what has been happening in the blockchain space inside, outside pharmaceutical industry, what blockchain basically means, right, from an enterprise scenario, and then talk about a few of the challenges that are being faced when people talk of adopting blockchain, and how are we as a company, as R3, are tackling those challenges and simplifying the journey for our customers. And finally, a few key takeaways that you could think about once you go back after this fantastic event that the team has put together. So if I want to start with the ultimate basics, right, what does blockchain solve for? And if you've not started on the blockchain journey, you may read about a lot of things that blockchain promises. It almost feels like blockchain can solve for anything and everything under the sun. But obviously that is not true. So blockchain solves for a very, very specific problem. And the problem that we see in the industry right now is you might have done a lot of automation for your company, right, within your company. And Amit spoke about few data science and analytics solutions that you're building. But when it comes to working with your partners, working with your suppliers, with your customers, the automation stops there in a way, because what you're doing is you're only concerned about what is happening in your company, and you have got systems and ERP systems and RPA and AI analytics, whatnot, to make sure that your internal processes are robust enough and you can analyze whatever is happening. But unfortunately, or fortunately, a lot of your data actually is coming from your partners. It could be your suppliers, your warehouse guys, your raw material suppliers. It could be your logistics providers, or even your customers, right? And these are the sources of data, and this data is not actually originating from your company. So what happens in today's case, and this is a very, very simplified view, obviously actual processes are much complex than this. You have two parties, right? Let's consider a two-party equation that you are one of the pharmaceutical companies, you're supplying to your customer. Then you will have your own set of systems where you're recording the work, maybe a PO, you're applying a bunch of business rules, you generate an invoice, you post an invoice, your customer gets that invoice, and she basically processes that invoice, makes sure whether the goods have been delivered as per the requirements, and then they probably pay the bill. But what happens here is you can clearly see there are two silos, right? So everything that happens here and everything that happens on the other side of the table is completely isolated. At the max, what you could have is probably an API which just posts your invoice from one company to another. But everything else is happening in isolation. And what this basically leads to is a lot of reconciliation, a lot of discrepancies. And basically, this is the problem that we are trying to solve for. What I see is not what you see. And where blockchain comes into picture, and this is our view, is basically blockchain solves for this very simple problem: is what I see is what you see. So in a blockchain-based world, you're actually not only sharing the network, but you're also sharing the data as well as business logic. And when you do this, what you're basically trying to solve for is both the side of the table or both the side of the equation are seeing the same thing. So that this basically eliminates a lot of your reconciliation, a lot of your discrepancies, and unlocks the automation possibilities. So I will talk about automation possibilities a bit later, but I want to make sure that all of us understand what is the basic core value that blockchain is bringing to the table. And obviously, once you have established this single source of truth, as it's called, then you can have a bunch of other processes working on top of it and automating a lot of your processes, which are involving external parties and not just internal to your organization. So if you look at this, it's picture quite a busy slide, but basically what is happening is from the current system where it is almost chaotic, there's a point-to-point communication, everyone is doing their own thing. It's very difficult to get an overall visibility of what is happening across the value chain. In a blockchain-based world, you're actually decentralizing and distributing the entire business network. so that everyone in the network is connected to each other. And then it's very easy to achieve transparency and tamper evidence into the network. At the same time, it can improve the regulatory reporting as well as reduce risks that are associated with counterpart. So if you have to simplify this, think of blockchain as a collaboration layer that you could use within your company, outside your company, that could simplify inter-organizational processes. Now, inter-organizational processes is the key word here, because to solve for processes within your organization, you have other techniques available. But if it comes to working with your ecosystem, with your partners, with your customers, suppliers, regulators, then you need a system which goes beyond the walls of the enterprise. And that's where blockchain can act as that one collaboration. So that was basically the talk on blockchain and very basic stuff on what blockchain solves for. I'm very sure all of you must have heard this word a lot. You might be thinking, "Oh, this is great, but are we there yet? Right? Is all of this real? Is it just theory? Have you seen any use cases, any success stories?" So the answer is yes. Blockchain has definitely hit the market. These are just few examples where we have worked on a bunch of companies, a bunch of our customers to use blockchain and the Corda technology that we have built to solve their business problems. So you will see big names like SIX, Swiss Digit, like Sage, NASDAQ, NatWest, DTCC. It has been very well picked up in the trade finance space. So we have got 2 global networks that are working on our technology. One is called Contour, other is called Marco Polo. And then there are a bunch of other initiatives that we have been doing in and outside financial services space. Insurance is another industry where this has picked up quite a lot. So in insurance, there are 2 global consortiums, again, B3I and Weststream Collaboratives. Again, both of them are using Corda as the underlying platform to solve for ecosystem level challenges. And there was a recent IDC report, which basically quoted a number. According to that report, there's $14.4 billion is the estimated spend by corporates on blockchain applications in 2023. Again, few numbers, and there are various numbers that are published by different consulting houses, analyst firms on the value of blockchain from business perspective. But this is not FS. This is not an FS event, right? This is a forum which is for pharmaceutical industry. So the next question that you may definitely have is, "Oh, this is great, Nikhil. We know probably blockchain is adopted in FS, but maybe that's where it ends. What is happening in the pharmaceutical industry?" So again, pharmaceutical industry has been picking up. I wouldn't say it is as mature as an FS industry in terms of blockchain, but this is a very big initiative that has been picked up by 12 global pharmaceutical firms. I'm sure some of the firms' leaders would also be talking on this forum, but this is basically a huge initiative of the European pharmaceutical companies. It's called Pharma Ledger, and it has got names like Novartis, Pfizer, Bayer, a bunch of more names, and I'm very sure someone in the next panels would be participating from those companies as well. This is where all of them have gotten together. They really understand the value of blockchain, and I think now they're trying to identify use cases and themes where all of these companies can come together and solve for problems that are at an ecosystem level. And this is not just one initiative, right? There are a bunch of other platforms or consortiums that have already been formed across the globe. Some of the names are over here. Again, this is not an exhaustive list, but basically a lot of companies across the globe have really risen up to this challenge, and they see blockchain that it can solve a lot of problems when it comes to inter-organizational systems or an ecosystem play. Majority of them, I would say, are focused on supply chain, on drug supply chain, on cold supply chain, but there are other use cases which goes outside the supply chain purview as well. But again, the idea of having this table was not to show the various names, but basically to showcase that it is really live. A lot of companies across the globe, even in pharmaceutical industries, are looking at blockchain to solve for their particular business issues. With that, I think I will now spend few minutes on the use cases that we see are quite prevalent. Again, this is a non-exhaustive list, so if you don't see something that makes sense to you on this slide, it does not necessarily mean that blockchain is not for you. As we discussed, or as we covered in the previous slide, blockchain is basically solving for that one simple statement: what you see is not what I see. And if you apply that to your business processes, let's say you are from the supply chain space, you may say, when I want to do a complete traceability across my supply chain, I don't know where my products are, where my inventory is, predominantly because the data is lying with multiple parties. I don't control the entire supply chain. There are a lot of third parties that get into my ecosystem. And the primary problem that I have is I don't have the data. And even if I get data from them, I'm not very sure whether I can trust that, whether they have changed the data or whether the data has got certain discrepancies. There's no way for me to validate the authenticity of the data. And that's where blockchain is supremely important and a very good tool to achieve that transparency or traceability, as we call it. And it is very relevant in pharmaceutical supply chain, especially the cold supply chain, where I think Amit covered it as well, on how do you make sure that if there is a product that has to be transported, if there is a vaccine which has to be transported across multiple parties in a controlled environment where temperature cannot vary above or below a certain range, you need to make sure the moisture is also taken care of and stuff like that. How do you make sure that whatever your third-party logistic operator is saying has actually happened? And then you can really trace the entire value, or you can at least trace the existence of that supply chain. So track and trace is a very, I would say, or most used use case, because basically everyone in the industry wants to solve for this problem. And where blockchain comes into picture is basically in this scenario where you have multiple parties who are responsible, right? If I take a step back, if you try to visualize the supply chain, you will have a manufacturer, you will have someone who's managing the warehouse, you will have distributor network, or CFAs as it's called, and then you will have a bunch of pharmacies and hospitals where the actual medicine is being consumed or is being purchased by an end consumer like you and me. And in the supply chain, each element, each leg of supply chain has got multiple actors. And because there is no underlying platform that connects all of them, what happens is we use Excels or we use other ways of making sure that we can share data with each other. But the problem with that is, again, going back to a previous slide, what you see is not what your customer sees or your supplier sees. And that's the core disconnect that blockchain can solve for. And if you are able to establish that one basic capability that I can really trace with confidence that this is how a vaccine has moved from maybe a contract manufacturer to a warehouse, to a CFA, to an pharmacy, and I can have data regarding what were the conditions under which that medicine was transported. In case something has happened in that transit, I will get to know about it, and then I can have smart contracts, or I can have certain business logic which can take automatic steps to either inform everyone who's supposed to get informed, or recall that particular batch, or have a penalty on or penalty on the third party transporter, or there might be some other business rule that you want to implement. So that's a very famous, and we have seen that use case a lot in all of our discussions. And second important use case is anti-counterfeit drugs. So I think 4% of the pharmaceutical industry's revenues are lost to counterfeit products. India as well, we see that problem being a very crucial one that people want to solve for. And this is where, again, blockchain comes to picture, or comes to a rescue, because with this, if there is a counterfeit drug that is getting introduced in your supply chain, because you will have that end-to-end visibility of what has happened to each and every batch that was moving across my supply chain, it's very easy to detect where exactly are the counterfeit products getting introduced in your supply chain. And if you're able to identify that, you may run various analytics and models to make sure that you are able to solve for certain bad actors that are there in your supply chain. It could be a particular region where you see a lot of fake products being introduced, or it could be a particular leg of supply chain where this thing happen on a regular basis. But if you have a blockchain system where all of your ecosystem partners are connected, it becomes very easy to identify where exactly a particular counterfeit drug has been introduced in your supply chain. And then, like I mentioned, right, from a numbers perspective, I think 4% of our overall revenue, it's a huge problem to solve for, and it goes beyond revenue, right? In case someone has an adverse effect because he or she has consumed an counterfeit product, it basically comes back to the brand owner, and it's a reputational impact on the brand as well. So if you don't have this kind of system, one is obviously it leaks your revenues, but more importantly, it's a huge reputational risk that you carry, and blockchain can definitely help you in these two examples. Other examples, I would say they're not very specific to cold supply chain, but quite interestingly, in pharmaceuticals, there's a lot of contract manufacturing that happens. Um, the problem with outsourcing your manufacturing is then you lose control over your processes. So we've got a partner called Stroken, a small a fairly nimble ISV. We've built a fantastic solution which can actually help you uh, ensure compliance to your SOPs, to your standard operating procedures, and make sure that you have that got end-to-end audit trail. So in case there is an audit that is happening from a regulator, you can actually show them this particular chain of records. Because it is on blockchain, because it is immutable, you can provide that as a single source of truth to the regulator or to a governmental agency who wants to review your process. And similarly, if you look at procure to pay systems, again, it's a classic problem. We call it three-way matching. Like you have a PO, a purchase order, you have a goods receipt, and then you have an invoice. Typically, these three come from three different sources, and then it's a manual effort to reconcile all of these documents together. But with blockchain, if all of them are present on the blockchain platform, then you can have an automatic reconciliation between three documents. So it really, really saves a lot of time, and more importantly, on your working capital efficiency as well, because it's not just about having 20 people do reconciliation, getting down to, let's say, 5 or 2 people, but it's actually the payments that are getting stuck because your records don't reconcile. Your payments are getting delayed, and it has a direct impact on your working capital efficiency. So these are, I think, two solutions which are very, very close to cold supply chain or supply chain and procurement professionals and business leaders. There are other use cases as well, but they are not very close to the cold supply chains. I won't go into it, but these are basically trying to show that it's not just the discrepancies that we are trying to solve for, but once we are going to establish that single source of truth in terms of what I see is what you see, then you can have more business models such as value-based contracts where you are paying to a particular supplier, or a pharmaceutical company is getting paid only if a particular drug gives out a particular result, right? Which is not possible right now because just the complexity of pulling off a value-based contract is so much that people usually don't get into those space. But if you have got a simplification done at the IT level, at a digital level, then you can have new business models which are based on value-based contracts, outcome-based contracts, so on and so forth. And then there is a huge element where blockchain again can be used for data sharing, for consent management. So clinical trials are going on all across the globe for COVID vaccines. You need to make sure that whatever data you're using for a particular patient, they have provided the consent, and you can actually provide it as an auditable record, saying I've got all the consents from a particular person before a particular drug was tried or tried on that particular. So there are a lot of other use cases as well. For the lack of time, I won't go into it, but then these are some of the use cases which we have seen being discussed at a more ecosystem level or even industry level when it comes to using blockchain in a pharmaceutical industry. I would like to now spend a few minutes on what are the perceived challenges. And again, perceived is the key word here because a lot of us don't necessarily talk about blockchain day in, day out. You may have these questions. Just want to make sure that we spend a couple of minutes on all of these. So the number one question that people usually have in their mind is, blockchain means I need to share data with everyone who is present on my network. But data security and data privacy is paramount to my business. I just cannot have data being leaked out to everyone in the ecosystem to solve for a particular business challenge. So does blockchain need me to share data with everyone? So again, the answer, and there are multiple answers to this, but I will cover this from an R3 Corda perspective. So we're quite cautious of this thing, and the way we have built our platform, the Corda platform, is basically saying you don't need to broadcast or send your data to everyone in the ecosystem. You only need to share data with your concerned counterparties. So this is a very different thing that we have done in our blockchain platform. Hence, it is very much suited for enterprises such as pharmaceutical companies. Second thing that people usually ask me a lot is, Nikhil, we have invested a lot on our digital transformation, on our existing IT systems. How does blockchain work with an existing tech stack? So again, what we've done from the Corda perspective is we thought about it quite early in our journey, and then we have really simplified the ways of integration of a blockchain system, of a Corda-based system with the existing ERP or any other system that you might have implemented on your side. So integrating blockchain with the existing IT systems has become super easy, and we have made sure that we have simplified that particular level. Third one is actually, I would say, a challenge of sorts, because blockchain is a little different, a little complex technology, and the blockchain skill sets are not easy to find. But what we have realized when we're building our company and the platform is you need to have thousands and thousands of developers and architects and business folks who can understand what is happening to use any technology. You may have a very good technology, but if no one understands how to use it, it's not going to see adoption. So what we actually did is we took a step back and we said, how do I make sure that everything that is happening right now in a pharmaceutical company can be re-leveraged or can be leveraged to solve for problems from a blockchain angle? And we have taken certain decisions which are helping on this parameter. For example, if you have to do anything on Corda blockchain, from a tech perspective, from an IT perspective, you don't really need to learn a new language. If your company has got Java developers, Java architects, if Java is used in your company in any manner, it's really super easy for your tech teams to adopt Corda from an implementation perspective. And there are other benefits that we have done. And the last one, I think, is people usually have this misconception that blockchain is only relevant for banks, only relevant for capital markets. So again, we covered a bunch of sites where it is already being used by pharmaceutical industry. And there are other industries outside FS space as well where blockchain is used. Because think of it as a collaboration platform that you can use with your partners, with your suppliers, with your customers to really streamline your operations and get rid of this boring and stupid reconciliation that you have to go through every now and then. With that, I think I'm coming to the end of my talk, but basically just few slides. I think I covered most of it in how do we solve it. So what we've actually done from a Corda perspective is we have fine-tuned the concept of blockchain so that it fits an enterprise scenario. So just to give an example, in our case, we do not broadcast information to all the parties in the network. You only send the information to the relevant parties so that there's no data leakage. Your data privacy is paramount to us as well as to you, obviously. But that's a major sort of a decision that we have taken when we started off with building of this platform. So privacy is very, very important for us. We don't believe in broadcasting information. There's a huge ecosystem of partners that we've built. So we are working more than 300 partners. So it's not just a bunch of guys sitting in a garage who understand how to do this. We have actually spent a lot of efforts making sure that the technology is evangelized, and then any Java developer can easily pick it up and start implementing. Integration, I think I spoke about it. Integration with the legacy infrastructure is super easy. The last point is very important because what happens is if you don't have interoperability, right? One company is doing their own blockchain initiatives, another company does its own blockchain initiatives, but unfortunately they are not using the same technologies. How do you solve for this? Because if this happens, you're again going back to that siloed world in which I will have my systems, you will have your systems, and we basically land at the same problem. So what we have actually done is we have set up something called a Corda network, which can be used as a global network of multiple smaller networks. So basically you can have your own company's network running within that bigger network. And tomorrow, if you want two companies to interact or two networks to interact with each other, that can happen quite seamlessly because we have thought through of such scenarios well in advance. Again, just a slide. I won't spend a lot of time on this, but we actually classify ourselves as third generation blockchain platform. There are a bunch of benefits that I spoke about. I won't go into much details, but basically we have taken a very different approach so that blockchain can fit an enterprise scenario and can help enterprises, pharma companies such as yourselves to use this technology in a very simplified manner. Again, few examples: fastest growing blockchain platform. So what's next, right? So where do you go from here? So hopefully all of that made sense to you. I started with a very basic understanding, but just wanted to give you a flavor of what is blockchain, where has been it used, what are the key challenges, and how do we solve for those. But in terms of what next, I would say if you're going back and you're a supply chain leader, I think start to think about how can this technology help you in your business initiatives. I think a lot of projects, it's very important to not start from a technology perspective, but really start from a business standpoint on what are you trying to solve for, and can blockchain be an enabler, and can Corda be an enabler to achieve that. In terms of mind mapping the entire thing, start to think of processes where data is flowing across multiple parties. So think of processes where data is maybe originating from your supplier, A warehouse guy is also adding on top of that data. You have a third-party logistic operator who's also adding on top of that data. And then you want to have a complete visibility of what has happened to your particular batch of medicines as it's moved from a warehouse or a manufacturer to an end consumer. And I think more importantly, all of us are in our own digital transformation projects, which is a great thing. All of us are trying to use technology, but most of the other technology options that we have are basically trying to solve for internal processes. Right? You're trying to automate your internal processes, have AI, analytics, RPA, have a next generation ERP in place. But the moment you want to include external parties or incentivize them to work together with you, I think that's where blockchain or Corda has a very strong element. This is more at ecosystem level. Point number 4 is, and even 5. So start reimagining what can happen. So imagine if you can have a network or you can have a platform where everyone is sharing their data. Try to reimagine what kind of insights can you pull out from those kind of data availability. If you're able to easily authenticate data, what else can you do with it from a business model perspective? Can you use a collaboration platform to share your assets, right? In COVID times, I think someone in a previous discussion had mentioned that they basically became a data aggregator where they're not looking at their competitors as competitors, but rather peers to share the logistic network. Can you do such things if you have gotten a very streamlined platform that can enable you to do all of this? And then we work with a large ecosystem of more than 300 partners. We ourselves are more than 400 member organization. We're happy to help you further refine your thought process, educate you, so on and so forth. So start small, I would say. It's a big thing to digest at one go. Start small, think big in terms of how you can impact your ecosystem. I think that this is the right time to start acting on the blockchain initiatives. And all of us have seen the disruption that happened in supply chain. And had we had such kind of an underlying platform, then all the resiliency, all the agility that is required can be easily articulated or pulled out from the capabilities that blockchain provides you and your competition or your ecosystem. So with that, I will end my talk. Thanks for again having me on this. But Sanjeev, I'm happy to answer any questions if someone has those.
Nikhil, there are a couple of questions, but we have time for only one question, and that is very interesting.
Sure.
Sachin Tikku wants to know, how can we pilot blockchain in pharma with low budgets?
Yeah, so I think that's a very good question, and a lot of keywords in that question. So yes, to start off, I think it should not be a very difficult proposition. Like I've said, so from a R3 perspective, we have made sure that we can leverage a lot of existing technologies. I would say more than the budget thing, I think if you're able to identify a use case where it helps multiple companies come together and solve for a particular business problem, I think that's the key question that we should ask ourselves. And once you have that, I think there are various ways in which we can help you or our partner ecosystem can help you to achieve something at a very low cost. Since the technology is maturing, I think the overall cost of implementation is also coming down. A lot of risks are being taken care of. So I don't think it should be hugely complicated, but happy to talk to you if you could reach out to me on a personal level. Happy to take this further. But a very good question. Thanks for that.
Thank you, Nikhil, for a great session. Moving on further, we have pharma session for the day. I would like to call all the panel moderator, Mr. Sudipto Basu from Boehringer Ingelheim, Mr. Himanshu Mallu from Jensen Pharma, Mr. Gaurav Arora from Biocon, Mr. Subhra Jyoti from AstraZeneca, Gaurav Bhatta from Sana, and Mohit Gulyani from Moglix.
Hi everyone.
Hi everyone. Can you see me and hear me as well?
Hi.
Yes, Sudipto.
Yes,
Hi,
Sudipto,
Namrata.
you're visible, audible, both.
Okay, so can I start?
Yes, Sudipto.
Hi. Good evening, all. At the outset, I hope that everyone is safe during this time of this COVID pandemic. At the outset, I would also like to thank the organizers and the sponsors once again who has enabled to bring everyone of us together in this platform to debate and share our views on multiple topics related to pharmaceutical industry, the supply chain, cold chain, and obviously the current pandemic which we currently have. As you already know, that the topic for the day is opportunities for Indian pharma as a global supply chain destination. So today, me together with the other esteemed panelists, we are going to discuss on the pharmaceutical industry, on the various strengths and weakness of the industry. We are going to talk about the supply chain, the cold chain, the pros and cons of various policies which are currently going on, and we will discuss this in details. So we have a set of questions together with the panelists. Before I introduce my panelists, the format would be like this, that I'll be taking all of you through the entire discussion with a set of questions which I am going to ask the esteemed panelists. And once we are done with that, we will be taking questions from the audiences as well. So please join me to introduce to all our 5 esteemed panelists. I'll start with Shubhra Jyoti Ganguly. Mr. Shubhra Jyoti is the Director of Global Supply Chain and Strategy of AstraZeneca. I hope you can see him. Shubhra Jyoti, hi.
Hey, hi.
Hi.
Good evening to all.
Welcome. Welcome. So the next panelist I have Mr. Gaurav Arora. Gaurav Arora is the Senior Director of Supply Chain from Biocon. Gaurav, hi.
Hi, Sudipto.
Hi, good to see you. I also have with me Gaurav Bhatia, who is the Associate Director of Supply Chain of Cipla. Gaurav, I can see you. Hi.
Hi.
Next, we have Himanshu Malu. Himanshu Malu is the Director of Supply Chain of Janssen Pharma J&J. Himanshu, I think you are on mute. So probably you need to unmute yourself
Everyone.
first.
Sorry.
Yeah, hi. Hi. Also, we have Mohit Guliani. Mohit Guliani is the Senior Director of Strategic Partnership of Moglix. Moglix, for the participants, it is one of the fastest growing B2B commerce company in the pharmaceutical and supply chain space.
Yeah, hi everyone. Very good evening. Yeah.
And also you have me, Sudipto Basu. I'm the Senior Manager, Head of Planning for Boehringer Ingelheim for India and the allied markets. Hi. So I would straight away go into my panelists. So the first question which I have for the panelists is that how the global pharmaceutical industry and the supply chain landscape is changing by the day. Second, the associated question together with this, why India? What India has got to lure the global companies? And can India really be an innovator? Do we really have the capability to produce the patents and really, challenge the globe? So I would invite Gaurav Arora first.
Yeah, hi, Sudipto. Thank you for giving me a chance once again, to speak on such a wonderful forum. I would like to thank Eldon as well to giving again this opportunity to meet all of you. See, Sudipto, answer to your question, for the global pharmaceutical markets are in the mid of some major discontinuities in terms of the GDP and the market scenario of other European markets. While growth in developed market will slow down, emerging markets will be becoming increasingly important in the coming decades. So one of the reason of this global pharmaceutical industry is to depend on the growth which India has shown in a two-way. One is being a self-market consumer, as well as the biggest opportunity market to the manufacturing industry of the pharmaceutical sector. So if I give you a significant roadmap which India has shown in last one decade, and putting on the example of last year versus 2018, so 2019 India has secured around 336 ANDAs versus in 2018 it was somewhere around 290 ANDAs. So if we talk about the entire ANDA, the US FDA have approved in 2019 is somewhere around 837 or 840. So you can see the growth and the contribution of India to the ANDA entire year is 40% approximately, which is as a India as a self, showing these kind of data where all the companies have contributed a significant role, important role in terms of showing the reliability, the quality of the products produced by the Indian market, and the skill set of the Indian manufacturing people who are already, at a higher level. The 10, 15 years before, the infrastructure quality and the schemes quality where India is now being compared to the European and US standards. So it's a purely and wonderful journey Indian pharmaceutical has been, given it to the market. And now if I compare the ANDA for entire year, for the till date, it's around 5,770 ANDAs, and now India has acquired 2,047 approximately ANDAs. So which is again kind of more than 38% of the ANDAs overall till date India has given. Now coming back to again one more question to the India as a pharma hub, there is a kind of growth for the consumer market is shown to the attract to the all manufacturer to attract towards India. There was no infrastructure, there was less knowledge of the diseases, there was less knowledge to the doctors. Now all significant changes has been done in last 10, 15 years. That's why this is a very, very good opportunity for India to to more moving as a consumer base and as a manufacturing hub of the pharmaceutical industry. Yeah, back to Sudipto.
Sure. I think thank you, Gaurav, for the introduction on this topic. I think you laid the foundation very well by speaking on the GDP, the consumer market, that India can also work as a self market for itself and also can export materials to the global world. You also stressed upon the point of the quality, the various quality aspects, and the increase in the skill levels and the skill sets of the employees who are working. And also you stressed upon the point that the awareness of all these things have really increased in India in the last 1 or 2 decades, which actually makes India a very good, which actually means that India is in a very good platform to catapult to the next level, which we are talking about. So next, I would like to invite Shubhra Jyoti in the debate, in the discussion. Shubhra Jyoti.
Thanks, Gaurav, for setting the context. I would like to take the audience through what is happening on a supply chain design point of view. What is happening in the global supply chain space in the pharmaceutical industry today? So it is actually a real test between for the agility of the manufacturing organizations and the supply chains of global pharma players today. Okay, with big investments in markets like China vis-a-vis the growth markets like Southeast Asia, India, and the South Americas of the world. So it's actually a decision between the consolidation of your resources and assets, investments in specific geographies, versus whether we want to move closer to the point of demand, and thereby reducing the time difference between a demand and supply. Now we know the concept of late stage customization, and late stage customization is actually where we bring the packaging of the products, while bulk and the tablets or the bulk products gets manufactured at the larger manufacturing facilities consolidated around the world. The packaging of the products to the point of demand, because most of the markets today are the market specific packs, for example. So late stage customization is the in thing today to kill any kind of bullwhip effect which we see because of the demand fluctuations in the markets, and more so in the current situation like COVID's. So thereby we have seen a lot of regional packing centers and external sourcings around the world for all the global players. And these are actually to mitigate and helping to mitigate the unforeseen disruptions, be it natural calamities, be it situations like today, what we are seeing in COVID, for example. And these decisions of decentralizing manufacturing are actually helping specific pharma players who are already decentralized. When the demand shift happens between players at a formulation level, which is more of a customer facing, at an API, at an all the stages of manufacturing and supply chain, which can be fueled by disruptions by someone's supply chain who is not able to respond to that kind of a change. But in the long term, I would say it's more of a collaboration between the government and the private players who will bring in the investments and in which geography. When you are talking about why India and how we can lure the global players into India, I think if my numbers are correct, we have the largest number of FDA approved manufacturing sites outside the US. I think Gaurav and others can vet that. Gaurav spoke about the ANDAs, India's share amongst the overall globally. The positives are a fantastic diligent workforce, possibly one of the lowest cost of operations countries and the geographies, fantastic global connectivities through air and sea. India is not a landlocked country, for example, so fantastic logistics connectivities. But what can go wrong for India? We have seen huge number of data integrity issues, huge number of 483s amongst all the global players, FD observations. So those are the areas, the pain points we need to address for India to become a big investment destination like China and others. And your last question, Sudipto, was about the innovation. Can India be an innovator for tomorrow? I would say it's a long way to go. We have seen, and let's accept the reality. We are challenged on innovation mindset and also the innovation infrastructure. Are the global players investing in R&D facilities in India? I do not see that is happening. Starting from Novartis to all the companies are moving to China, Sweden, and other countries today. There is a huge brain drain which is happening from India. All the IITs of the world, the best of the cream de la cream students moving abroad. And the last piece is, I would say, R&D as a career for the bright students of future. Are they looking at R&D as a career? I see there is a big challenge. Why? Because success is not immediate there. Success is far and few. So are we patient enough? Our students of tomorrow and the researchers of tomorrow from India, are they willing to wait for that success? I see a challenge there. So India as an innovation destination, I see a long way to go. Thank you.
Thank you, Subhrajyoti. I think you started very well by stating two most critical points, one of which was basically to ensure that the products and the APIs and the things are more closer to the point of demand, which is very, very critical at this point in time during COVID. You also stressed upon the point of decentralization and led customization to counter the bull effect. And you also at the end showed very pragmatism in understanding and also accepting the fact that from an innovator's life cycle point of view, India probably is a bit below various other countries. And that is one thing where probably we need to catch up in big time. So thank you. So next I would like to invite Gaurav Bhatia. Gaurav, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Sudhir. So, am I clear?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you. So, thanks to Eldon for bringing all of us together on this topic, and which is something I would say a very hot topic, which is discussed especially post COVID. And so before I start in terms of the effect of pandemic or what is it, how is it changing right now? Hello?
Yes, we can hear you. Kindly
Oh.
go ahead. I think your net is a bit creating some issues, but I think we can still hear you.
Okay, okay. Thank
Namrata is fine, right? His voice and everything is okay?
Yes, Sudipto.
you. Okay, thank you. So just to start in terms of some again data and statistics, Indian pharma contributes roughly around 20.8 billion in the last financial year, and is growing at a clear rate of 10% annually. So with this rate that we see, it is definitely the number one exporter for pharmaceutical globally, driven largely by the US market and then China and others. But when I look at this data, I feel very proud. And the biggest reason I think has been covered very well earlier also. But just to add, I think our manufacturing capabilities of the finished goods. I'm specifying on this finished goods first of all, and definitely our manpower and our intellect to drive the entire pharmaceutical, especially on the generic space, is quite high. No doubt. I think globally the numbers say it all. And the way it is growing, I see India will continue to be the number one exporter and lead the race in the pharmaceutical space. Now, even I think with this pandemic, we can clearly see a lot of Indian pharma is specifically pharma as an industry, and Indian pharma is enjoying the kind of the upsides, demand upside due to COVID. Those who are kind of in that space of and have a robust, all of us, I think we take pride in our robust supply chain, and we are getting seeing a lot of upsides in for our organizations. And true to that, the stocks price touching all-time high, 52 weeks high, are a clear reflection or a mirror of that. Last but not the least, uh, I think on the patents expiries, the question was there, where I think this is a huge or a good opportunity for the Indian generic pharma, and the pipeline is quite promising. And if I have to just give an example, we got a approval almost 6 months in advance from the US FDA for a respiratory drug called albuterol, which is also kind of, I would say, driving a good, I would say, margin profile, etc., for the organization. Plus, in a lot of organizations, I see that there are the approvals are expedited by the regulator, and there is a good plus on that. However, we also need to look on the innovation side. How do we innovate? Whereas right now we are very good in terms of filings and I would say to be second to the market, or to be the first generic player to the market. We are very good with that. However, the innovation in terms of being the first to innovate with a molecule or a drug is still yes, but I think we are catching up, and we are very good with the being the first to file in terms of the ANDAs, which Mr. Gaurav also mentioned. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Gaurav. Thank you, Gaurav, for the data, which clearly shows that India is already the number one exporter. And obviously, there are silver linings in the entire industry, and there are positive things to cheer about, obviously. And also, you highlighted on the fact that obviously a lot needs to be done on the innovator side. So I would now invite Mr. Himanshu Malu to share his views and comments on the introduction, on the introductory question.
Thank you, Sudipto. And I think all Gaurav, both the Gauravs and Subra already mentioned it. And the way we have been progressing, especially almost 20% contribution of the global exports comes from India, and export is growing almost at 17-18% CAGR from India, especially on the pharmaceutical industry. I think that itself shows that how we have been kind of increasing our hold on the global export market for pharmaceutical. If I really look at some of the examples that I've been seeing very recently is, so in J&J, when we look at the global portfolio and the profile, I'm seeing there's an increasing focus in terms of finding suppliers in India. right? So earlier, if you look at it, okay, China was one of the big supplier for many of the APIs, but now even India is being looked at as important supplier base. And in fact, what we are trying to see is that what we are really seeing is the more competitive advantage even compared to China for many of the products. So that's one big thing which is really differentiating, which is about competitiveness. Second thing is the reliability. So especially if you look at during the COVID time and 4 5 months, though we have been, we know the complexity of our country, we know the challenging situation we all have been facing. At the same time, when it comes to supplying the APIs and the excipients from India to global companies and the countries, India has shown one of the most reliable supply chain across the world. Many of the material, I mean, some of the material which comes from US and Europe, for us, they had increased the lead time from almost already the lead time were on the higher side was almost 2.5 to 3 months, and which increased to 3 to 4 months time. India could almost maintain its lead time, which is already in the lower side. So some of these things are making India more favorable. One is cost. Second thing is the reliability. Third thing is consistent lead time that we provide. So we know how to manage the complexity. We know how to kind of ensure that the costs are in check. At the same time, the reliability increases even during the pandemic time. So overall, I would say that we are well placed in terms of continuing our aggressive journey in the pharmaceutical industry globally, and I'm sure this is going to increase the export further. In addition to it, of course, we are seeing number of initiatives are being taken by Government of India to promote local manufacturing. At the same time, even export, right? So we've seen export-oriented units coming up, which are kind of getting support from government in terms of aids of license and aids of approvals, which is going to help further the pharma industry. So I would say overall, I think we are definitely we can see a much brighter light in coming months and the years to come.
Thank you, Himanshu. So well said on the few aspects, like India is obviously a driver when it comes to cost, when it comes to reliability, when it comes to a shorter lead time. And obviously those are the strengths which we need to harness and which we need to work on. And yes, so we will basically touch base on those topics going forward as well, as we go along in the entire panel discussion. I would now like to invite Mohit to share his point of views on the initial comments.
Yeah, thank you so much, Sudipto, and very good evening to everyone, everyone in the panel, and anyone who's listening to us, whether on the live session or on the recorded session later. Hello from me. Well, I'm kind of nervous because you have on the panel people who and veterans from the industry, supply chain leaders from the industry, and overall, if I see it is over 100 years of experience in pharma industry right now sitting in the panel. So whatever I say may not be as relevant to what already both the Gauravs, Shubhrajyoti and Himanshu and Sudipta you have added already. So I'll try to be as brief as possible. So what we really see today, Indian pharma industry essentially stands at somewhere around 40 billion USD, and it is expected to grow to up to 100 billion USD by 2025. So while the nation grows essentially from $2.5 trillion economy to $5 trillion economy, that is by 2x, pharma industry has to shoulder the burden of growing by 2.5x. That is outpacing the nation's growth story. And I'm sure a lot of that burden would be on the able shoulders of the gentlemen here in the panel. And I think to propel this humongous growth, to grow by 2.5x within 5 years, where would the focus will be essentially 2 3 main areas. One is generics. So generics, India anyway is the leader and exporting a lot of it globally. Gaurav mentioned we export close to $20.8 billion on a yearly level. So a lot of it has to continue to happen. Second, vaccines. So I think vaccines, again, India manufactures a lot of it. And again, we need to continue our market dominance and continue to export more, finding new geographies and building on top of that. And third point, which was very well highlighted by Shubhrajyoti, is essentially, India has extremely good talented folks. We have best of the IITs, best of the engineers, best of the scientists, but a lot of them go outside. So if we happen to control them and we happen to retain them within the country and develop and invest on our R&D, I think that target is difficult. of growing by 2.5x, but it is definitely achievable. And but I feel at the same time it's not going to be a rosy journey. India is one of the most competitive markets. Just to throw in a perspective and a data point, while by volumes we are number 3 in the globe in terms of manufacturing of medicines, but by value we are at number 10, right? So essentially what does it mean? It means that the average cost per capita per medicine is essentially amongst the lowest across the globe in India. And while costs are so stringent and prices in the market are very tight, the supply chain leaders here, the marketing leaders sitting in the offices have to really control the cost and come to the market really, really fast. So we essentially have to give an immense, massive growth rate at optimized cost. And it's going to be a tough challenge, but I'm sure all of us would be able to get there. Thank you.
You, Mohit. So we're at the end of the part one. I think, as you have rightly mentioned, that the pharma industry needs to grow at 2.5 times compared to its current base, whereas India as a country will probably grow twice in the same time frame, which actually brings me to the next section of our entire panel discussion, which basically focuses the entire from our pharmaceutical industry to the authorities, the government policies, and the reforms. So my next question will be for Mr. Godav Arora and Shubhro Jyoti. And the question is that what are the specific steps which the government of India and the other authorities have taken to promote Make in India in healthcare sector? And also, how can we de-risk the geopolitical issues and strengthen the pharmaceutical industry and also supply chain as a whole, which will ensure that the industry grows and achieves the target which it has set for itself. So over to Godav Arora and Shubhro Jyoti. And also,
Yeah,
if
thanks.
after both of them, yeah. Sorry, please go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
So Gaurav, will go first.
Thanks, Sudipto. Yes, so this is very relevant.
So Godav goes first, and then you, and then the other panelists can also come in.
So answering to your first question related to the government policies, actually, it's a very these policies are going to very important role because a recent development by the Indian government in the July end, there is a framework rolled out by Indian government about the Indian as a global pharma hub to de-risk the 53 APIs and their intermediate. They have made at least a framework, though it's a very initial stage to comment on those policies, and there are some. So I'm not going to open nuts and bolts of that policy, but yes, the first step as a government of India has been taken to de-risk those APIs. So this is very early stage to say anything, but yes, it's a positive move. And API in India would be definitely helpful towards the Atmanirbhar Bharat schemes to start up. As Mohit said, the burden would be on the pharmaceutical industry in each and every policy of the Indian government, whether it is to become a 5 trillion economy or to become a Atmanirbhar Bharat or to promote an India as a pharma hub policy. So apart from this, digitization has been playing a good role in terms of the policies where the companies are following up that kind of digitization, each step to the process, each step of supply chain, each step of the other functions. Indian governments are contributing a kind of significant uh, opportunity to the each industry who are into the digitization, like Moglix and other companies are already doing a kind of customized app making services, or there are further facilities which are being given to the manufacturing hub as well as the supply chain 3PL logistics companies. Third thing by the central government and the state government done is they have modified and amendment their internal procurement policies where they have to buy 50% from the local industries. So this is the one of the great initiative. Earlier there was nowhere mentioning any about the allocation of the local versus any kind of open market. And then we have seen in last 5, 6, 7 years, the government also giving tendering to the multinational companies, Chinese companies, or East Asia Pacific companies. But now it's a mandatory to entire their procurement is spent 50% has to be localized. Another good move which is vocal for local, but yes, this is very good in term of talking and in term of doing the these policies on the paper. But yes, as a supply chain or as a buyer for the manufacturing industry, we have to ensure that whosoever the small players of manufacturing industries are going to come up in the field of manufacturing, or they are going to put a new infrastructure, we have to ensure some of the allocations, some of the long term contracts, some of the contract manufacturing, some of the exclusivity to them, to make sure them they should get the business at least for the next 5, 10 years. Coming back to the your second question, which is how to de-risk the geopolitical, because many of the pharmaceutical and many of the other industry who are dependent on the China are already on the de-risking platform. Due to this pandemic and the earlier situation of the China, all the companies who are depending in the China already started the system. So now, as a supply chain team member, we have to ensure for each and every company to get the business continuity, and all our smooth operations should be available at all the time. Only the thing is, again, if we co-link these all two questions, because it's a very relevant. One side, India government is pushing and promoting a local. One side, your company also need to de-risk the other markets of the countries like China or other Asia Pacific. So the both are correlated. If you have to ensure supply chain, and if you have to support your government policies, you can do that very easily in terms of the giving a chance and long term business assurance to your local manufacturers. Only the thing is, the new manufacturers who are going to come up, why the earlier 2, 3 decades before, Indian small manufacturers were died in term of the business, because the China has taken up in the some of the price advantage, and they have produced the all products in a bulk in the large volumes. So all the manufacturer and all the buyers attracted towards them, and then how small players were not having the business assurance, and that's how they closed. Now in the same situation, if we are going and we are asking as a government, asking to come up with the new plans or new manufacturer, at least they should have enough kind of business for next 5, 10 years. That's a responsibility towards the nation. That's a responsibility towards the de-risking to your supply chain, and to ensure and strengthen your business continuity plan as a company. Thanks, Sudipto. Over to you.
Yeah.
Um,
So Shubhra Jyoti, yes.
Yeah, hi. So this is the Make in India question, right? How government of India is enabling this drive. So I'll just give you some data for the benefit of the audience and also the panelists. There are, and I will talk about not only pharmaceuticals, the entire healthcare sector as well. So there has been a production linked incentive scheme that has been rolled out by the government for APIs. And the KSMs, for example, for APIs, it was to the extent of around 3,000 crores, if I remember correctly. For the KSMs, around 6,900 to 7,000 crores. And a big benefit government is also rolling out for the medical devices industry. Remember, medical devices in India imports, annualized import value is to the extent of around 49 to 50,000 crores. And that is the total total value of imports. And so to counter that, the government is promoting a local financial outlay for to the extent of around 3,400 to 2,500 crores in the March scheme announcement. So this is talking about APIs, KSMs, the medical devices industries. On the infrastructure point of view, the government is coming up with the bulk drug parks. For example, it's more of a collaborative manufacturing. They're looking at a concentrated manufacturing. And the expectation is around on a first track implementation mode. It is expected to come up in the next 2 to 2.5 years. They are talking about. Discussions are underway to extend these schemes for the exports as well. Another big I would say investment for the government in terms of promoting the localized manufacturing and sourcing is by the Department of Promotion for Industry and Internal Trade, the DPIIT, where they are now coming up with the amended guidance where all the non-local suppliers are not allowed or not considered for any government purchases. Okay, so that is the scheme they have announced. How far it will take for the implementation on the ground needs to be seen. And now that is by DPIIT. Now pharmaceuticals fall under DOP, is the line industry. So obviously we are expecting the DOP also to come out with their guidance on this. When the Ladakh situation happened I think in the month of early June or so, we saw fast track approvals by the health authorities for localized packaging movements. For example, shifting the packaging components or the packaging, not only sourcing packaging components, the packaging operations itself into India and into India. So thereby, the existing drugs also are going for a fast track approvals for relocation into India. So I would conclude by saying that the government is serious and they are taking the right steps in terms of enabling and promoting self-reliance, and it is required for this critical sector, which is growing at I think a 17 to 18% CAGR Himanshu was talking about. The policies are being framed and published, but the implementation on the ground with respect to investments and also the fast track in implementation of the projects, that is something needs to be seen. But all the global players are getting interested, I would say.
Thank you. So anyone else wants to add on to this point? Gaurav, Himanshu, and Mohit, before I can summarize the entire thing.
I think very well captured already, Sudipta. Yeah.
Okay. So I think, yeah, so as we basically understand from both Gaurav and Shubhra Jyoti, that the government has absolutely taken some very good positive steps, be it on the API front, incentivizing the small manufacturers, the vocal to local process, ensuring that the small companies get the priority, the local procurement policies, the SEZ, the fast track approvals, the medical device, focus on the medical device industry, the creation of the bulk group parks. So what we basically understand that the stage is already set. We need to see how the policy is implemented on the ground. But yes, so which basically sets the stage that if we know what we have to achieve as an industry, and we know that the government's policies are also aligned to that direction which we internally have. So let's understand how the industry as a whole is coping up with the current pandemic and what are the key strengths the industry is basically showing. So for this section, I would like to call upon Gaurav Bhatia, who would basically take my question, how has Indian pharma industry shown agility and resilience in this current times? And how has the partnership with various cross-functional teams and other organizations and other agencies as well has helped us? And after Gaurav, if anyone wants to join in, he can comment on this point as well.
Sure. Thank you, Sudipto. And this will also partly answer one of the questions that I see from the audience, Debospeta. How can Indian pharma supply chain become superior to others? So one thing very clearly, which I want to kind of put in what I've seen during this pandemic, Indian pharma and specifically supply chain being the backbone, which has been recognized not just specifically for the pharma, but overall. If you see right from other industries like FMCG, etc., the two key things which are major challenges is one in terms of the manpower, which is from the point of view of manufacturing as well as in terms of distribution. where Indian pharma or Indian supply chain has taken a lead, I would say. They have done a lot of partnerships, be it with the HR cross-functional teams, be it with your local, I would say, unemployment agencies, etc., to get the manpower. Because in pandemic, this pandemic was a global pandemic. So one common link is this was across the globe. So if you are having being hit by for some aspect, everyone else was, and hence here comes the real I would say the art or the real skill work which this supply chain has done. Firstly, in terms of having ensuring continuity of manpower, continuity of production, continuity of distribution and logistics across not just the nation but globally. So that is one key aspect where Indian supply chain has shown key resilience, I would say, and agility. In also on the second point, for getting the raw materials. Now, I will take a relevant example and recent example from my own organization, how Cipla has collaborated with other organizations and done booked a charter flight, taken approval from government of India, government of China, because our how whatever you say, but we are still largely for our raw materials dependent on Chinese source, and hence we wanted to ensure our continuity of supplies from the API perspective, which is largely driven from our neighboring country. So we did quickly before this pandemic could halt everything in terms of flights, etc. We got with the government of India, Ministry of Health, and they have supported us in getting this charter flight from here and coming back with the APIs which were landlocked inside our neighboring countries, with also with partnership of other organizations, so as to also stabilize or reduce the cost, normalize the cost burden. So these I would say are key two examples, and which we I think we all know how logistics as an industry has come up with milk runs. So instead of delivering a point-to-point service, there was they were covering the nationwide with say 2 persons or 3 persons in the truck, and they did milk runs and delivery runs to cover a longer duration with in one go. So I think agility, resilience has clearly been the mark of the Indian supply chain, especially from the pharma industry. We have ensured continuous supplies, be it related to your COVID related medicines, which we saw as a need for the organization, be it HCQs, be it azithromycin, be it remdesivir injection, be it Fabiflu or Paravir, as certain dose forms which were required by the hospitals or doctor fraternity or medical fraternity were clearly ensured the supplies to all the nodes, to all the right nodes. And the tools also help a lot besides the people. So the involvement of various demand tools or various distribution planning tool, analytics, all of it, maybe we can cover subsequently, but that has also helped us in terms of this agility and resilience shown. Thank you.
Thank you. So anyone else wants to add any other comments on this?
So just quickly want to add, Sudipto, I think what Gaurav already talked about, the collaboration within various companies and also with the organizations like IPM or OPPI. I think kind of the job which has been done by the pharmaceutical industry was completely to keep the patients at the center. The objective has been only to ensure that our medicines are reaching to the patients in need. And everyone came together. We didn't even see that who is the competitor, who is not. I think the objective was to pull in the resources, making the best use of it, and delivering the products in time. So I just want to highlight that. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Sure. I think you have mentioned a very good point. I think the point of OPPI was also coming to my mind, because as I was going back to my planning days in the month of March and April, We remember that we, together with the other innovator companies, we did book a Air India flight from Germany to India so as to ensure that all the products reach on time. I think we all did that. I think we did not keep in mind that okay, if I am getting Sanofi products in my flight, then they will also be able to get the market share. So we did not have any kind of those kind of thinkings in our mind. And I think what Gaurav, when you mentioned, is basically the industry as a whole, and each and every employee of the industry really showed a lot of accountability. That yes, we understand that we are dealing with drugs, which are medicines, and and which will impact the health and life of an individual. And once we have showed that accountability, we really did show a lot of agility and entrepreneurship to solve the problems which were there on the ground. And yes, so I think that I think really tough times the industry has seen in the last 5-6 months, and we also now understand this will continue for a few more quarters as well. So I think best of luck to all of us to ensure that we keep on the good work for the industry and the society as a whole as well. I think Shubhrojyoti wants to comment a few points.
Yeah, I would like to add two on the supply chain design point of view, how most of the companies who are importing from offshore locations, strategized and changed the design for those 2 quarters or so. When China was into full-blown COVID month of January, February or so, and we were expecting, and Italy was getting impacted, Iran was getting impacted initially, and then slowly Delhi and the northern part of the country started. So global companies like AstraZeneca and others would have done the same thing. We actually pushed the inventories out of the offshore manufacturing locations to the closer to the markets. For all the markets, we did that. So we did not keep the inventories at the manufacturing locations for immediately after QA release. Those were pushed out, for example, and there was huge challenges booking. The commercial flights were banned by the government of India, and most of our imports happen through the commercial flights rather than the cargo flights. So booking cargo flights, availability of those like UPS or the DHLs of the world, there was a huge challenge. The second thing that happened on the planning parameters point of view, most of the supply chain folks will understand, is the design stock levels went for a complete change. Be it the demand safety stocks, be it the supply safety stocks, the replenishment intervals, all those parameters in our API and other planning tools were completely changed to make the products visible and make it available closer to the point of demand. So while government helped on the ground, our government affairs team worked closely with the health authorities and all. With the supply chain guys, we did the back end stuff in terms of making the plan changes for immediate quarter. For example, normally it doesn't happen, the design stock changes in such a short period of time. So those are the things that happen in the back end to make sure that the inventories move swiftly from the manufacturing locations to the points of demand, and thereby mitigating any kind of transit challenges which we saw at a later part of the period.
Thank you, Shubhrojyoti. I think you initiated the discussion on the planning, the SNOP, the inventory norms, and all those things, which is basically my next segment. So I would like to invite Himanshu Malu to comment first on this question. After that, I will come in, and then the other panelists again can chip in. So the question basically is that going forward, with the keeping in mind that our future aspiration is that we need to make India as a global hub for pharma operations, how can the multi-country sales and operations planning be made superior than what currently is? And how efficient can our integrated business planning be? And what will be the roles of the various tools and techniques and IT in this entire scheme of things?
Yeah. So Sidipto, again, a very good question, because if I really look at the planning and analytical skills, I think we really kind of lead the world. So there are many places where, in fact, many companies where the analytics hub or the planning hub sits out of India, right? And that's where, if I really see from the planning perspective, from bringing that analytical abilities which can help us to drive the business, we Indians do really well. And as we all know that, data is the new oil, right? And if the business machinery has to run smoothly and efficiently, we must know how to use the data. That's where, if I see in terms of systems, in terms of tools that we've been using it, we create the possibility to optimize the supply chain. We create the possibility to reduce the lead times, right? And this actually helps the lot of global countries and the companies in all. So whether it's like you talk about APOs, you talk about the DRP tools, or the optimizers, we are the one who have been really utilizing it very efficiently. I mean, across the companies, across the industries I've seen, and it's not just about pharma. Across many industries, if we see, I think we've got a good skill set over there. If I just give you example for our own J&J, I mean, in our global, the analytics team sets out of India, our global, the digital automation team sets out of India. So these, these are the kind of the talent that we have in India, which is helping us to drive the decisions, the analytics around around our supply chain, and not just supply chain, but overall creating that business excellence, right? So I'm pretty confident that, I mean, we've got good capabilities to work on those tools. Yes, there are a few issues in India with respect to the while we have been trying to, while we are far ahead in terms of the analytics and the digitization, I think the adoption varies from over the entire end-to-end supply chain. We still kind of struggle to get the secondary sales data right easily in pharmaceutical industry. So we don't get those data. So while we have a good hold on the primary sales, secondary sales still we have to wait for the month end to get those data, and that too comes many times in very different paper formats. So we have a way to go, but the kind of given the complexity, given the environment, we are progressing well on that.
Absolutely, Himanshu, you're spot on. I think when you mentioned that, that for pharmaceutical industry and other industries might be getting the secondary data, we are still not advanced in that overall life cycle scheme of things. I think one point which I also would like to highlight, the sales and operations planning and the integrated business planning, whether we are operating only in India or whether we are operating across the globe, since we need to understand under this entire globalization or localization, whatever we call it. I think we interact with almost each and every country, and the suppliers are basically scattered across the globe. I think the first thing which any organization, especially our pharmaceutical industry, needs to do is to assess what basically is the maturity of his or her company. Because suddenly, if we are not very high on the maturity of implementation of sales and operations planning, suddenly we cannot implement an integrated business planning. Because integrated business planning is probably the last stage in the entire journey. So I think the first thing is that we need to really understand what is the maturity in which the organization is. Slowly take one step at a time. Obviously, Epics and other organizations have their own frameworks of the various maturity models we have. Once we have analyzed the as-is process, we can use various tools and techniques to really catapult us from stage 1 to stage 2 and stage 3. And at the end of the day, the final goal obviously should be an integrated business planning, which basically means, as per what I understand and as per what industry experts say, is that to have a uniform plan across the organization. I mean, we cannot have a separate plan of supply chain. We cannot have a separate procurement plan, separate sales plan, a separate budgeting plan. Ultimately, at the end of the day, there has to be one plan which drives the entire organization towards the growth objectives the organization has. I think that is one very critical point, I think, which you also mentioned. But for that, I think we need to really understand how we can integrate data and how we can use the various tools and techniques available. There are multiple tools and techniques available in the industry, but the organization needs to understand which is the critical or the apt tool which it can use to ensure that it runs its sales and operations and integrated business planning as per the need. So that is one point which I had. So anyone else wants to join on this entire planning topic?
So I'd like to add there, and very relevant, very relevant way put out by Himanshu that India's got one of the best talents to really work on the data. In fact, I have friends working for a lot of American and European companies, and they are Indians essentially, and sitting out there and essentially working on data and analytics. We have a lot of homegrown companies working on data and analytics as well. But what I have seen really is, while we have brilliant data on sales and operations side, on the front end side, we have a brilliant data. We've got all our products catalog, what is the sales, first leg of sales, tier 2 sales, tier 3 sales, everything we can track quite well. the data on the back end is usually not in that great state. And any form of analytics, any form of tools, we talk of AI, ML, blockchain, whatever we talk of, all these systems are essentially going to work on garbage in and garbage out, right? Essentially, till the time we don't correct the backend data, we can take on the best of the platform, best of the tools, but it is not going to give us apt results. I mean, for my example, just to exemplify, we've seen data of large organization across sectors, and in a 500 crore company, also in a 50,000 crore company, also they in the back end when they buy products, they would buy, just by mentioning a pen, they would buy a 5 rupee pen also and a 5,000 rupee pen also. And essentially on such data, what sort of analytics would one be able to run? So I think what is also required here is a brilliant catalog in the back end for that set of products, and essentially then further working on those analytics and deriving right results on how to optimize inventory, how to predict what products would I be requiring to make my manufacturing supply chain absolutely breakdown free, and essentially then start working on it from there. So first principles, a lot of first principles have to be introduced there as well. Yes.
Thank you, Mohit. So the next question was basically for you, which is more about the digital space and the challenges with the various tools and techniques. So the specific question was that, is India ready for the challenge from a digital point of view? Where are we actually in the life cycle? Whether predictive analytics, AI, and everything is still a thing, and even blockchain, which we just heard about just prior to we started the session. So how relevant all of this is, and if you can take us through your point of view and help us understand.
So first of all, apologies. I didn't know next question is going to be mine. I would not have contributed so much already then. Well, okay. So your question, Sudipta, is in two parts. One, is India ready? Well, essentially, India cannot be more ready than ever, because if we look at history today, at this point of time in India, internet data is the cheapest. Mobile phone penetration is at like the peak. Geo has really, taken the country by the storm. It is so cheap to actually get internet access. And along with roti kapda and makan, Wi-Fi and internet has become a necessity for everyone around us. Thanks to connectivity and technology, all of us can still sit together and have a brilliant chat around the topic today. So I think India is digitally ready. One core thing we need to fix is around data, first of all, before we move on to the next stages. And then where all we can use technology, essentially, especially from the pharma sector, I think it will be in the three spaces, three domains mostly. One is while manufacturing the products. Second is while selling the products. And third is while procuring the products. So when we talk of manufacturing, a lot of technology has already come in, wherein through data-driven analytics, we can now do predictive maintenance, ensure that there is no blockages or stoppages on the line. We are now have successful use cases and case studies we've seen in India, wherein higher throughput can be derived through Industry 4.0 and equivalent technologies. On sales side, we talk of, especially in the sector you guys operate in, it has technology has taken all by storm. Today the likes of NetMeds, Pharmacy, 1mg and whatnot, consumers can directly order sitting at home, and what it's such a brilliant experience they can get just by sitting at home and at a better price. We know a lot of companies who are your peers who are now experimenting with D2C sort of models. So using technology, can they essentially reach out to the consumers directly? A lot of companies like yours are essentially working on using technology that how can they reach out to doctors and make them try their products through technology. They can build brilliant CRMs around it, and doctors are further meeting their patients using telemedicine. I think telemedicine has again revolutionized the country. What used to cost like a 500 or 1,000 rupees earlier is now being brought down to almost free cost for a patient to talk to his or her doctor. So sales side also has been revolutionized for the pharma as an industry. And then talking of procurement side, I think procurement side, again, revolution had to come in. Today in the B2C world, when I or you place an order on a Flipkart or Amazon, we can essentially track the product in the supply chain, as in where is it right now, what is the ETA, when is my mobile phone going to reach to me. But 3-4 years earlier in the supply chain, if I had to track where is that bearing in the supply chain, where is the V belt or lubricant in the supply chain, which was supposed to reach to me and has still not reached, I had to call up my supplier, and he used to make me a promise that sir, it'll come to you. My boy has left and it'll reach you. I didn't have a technology platform to track it. But over there, a company like Moglix, we have really stepped in, and we have built platform, and along with physical supplies. So we take care of physical supplies to industries and manufacturing companies as well, where people cannot just optimize on their cost, link it with their SAPs or Oracles or internal ERPs, but also have end-to-end tracking of where their product is in supply chain, what is the analytics around it, how can they further optimize on predicting the inventory levels of the stocks, is where now technology is helping in the supply chain in pharma industry.
Sure.
Yes.
Sure. Thank you, Mohit, to basically shared with us how technology and innovation can help us, the entire industry and the sector. I think Gaurav wants to share something. Gaurav Bhatia, over to you.
Sure. Thank you. And I think Mohit captured it very well, in great detail, I would say. So just one point to add, I think, and that's also something which is very much supporting the Indian pharma industry, is the Indian IT and digital industry. So while Indian pharma is roughly around 20-22 billion, Indian IT industry is $180 billion USD. So and the best of the brains in our IT. So when both of these collaborate, we have seen what we are doing, I think, in the space of predictive analytics. You take artificial intelligence, you take which is supporting your entire demand planning today, is so getting efficient through these tools. Again, AI, or you take it machine learning. So while your data comes in, your machine continuously keeps not just fetching it, but also learning and correcting for the future. So these technologies, and we just heard a presentation fantastic on blockchains. So Indian IT industry is also coming as a core strength for the pharma industry, and we are fastest in terms of adaptation and execution. That is also, I would say, a core strength that we have in terms of superbly kind of executing and adaptation, and drawing the benefits out of it, the ROI. We all are from our childhood are focused, or our parents have told ROI, what is the returns, and that continues even with the senior management. We have to first justify the returns, and then we go for the technology adoption, and we deliver the values out of it. Now also just taking so while Mohit captured very well, one other aspect also, I think, logistics and distribution are also coming up very well, using the DRPs, which echelon, which node requires what kind of inventory, or in how much, so that either you are not having too much inventory at one echelon, or you are not having stocked out on the other echelon. So I think that is just to add. While there are other technologies, Ariba on procurement, demand planning, we have a lot of tools and techniques. Supply planning, we have the entire PPDS module, or the APOs of the world. So yeah, so yes, to just I wanted to also add and complement with these other facts, in terms of we are very well digitally integrated, as well as digitally adopting supply chain, and as a nation we are getting benefits. Thank you.
Sure, Gaurav, as you have rightly mentioned that though we on one side we have those global names with SAP, Oracle, with their solutions for the industry, solutions for the supply chain. We also have local indigenous organizations who are also coming up with their own platform and own solution for a specific problem in an Indian way. So that also really is the good thing for the entire industry and the ID space. So I move on to the next question. Couple of more, only couple of questions from my side before we move on to the Q&A part. So the next question is again to Mr. Gaurav Bhatia and Himanshu Malu. So, so this basically talks about the logistics and the service level. So are our logistics landscape and the service level in India competitive enough to attract more and more investment? And also what are the changes are needed in our strategic sourcing network for India? So I would request both Himanshu Malu and Gaurav Bhatia to comment on this, and any others can also join in.
First?
Yeah. So yeah, I can talk first. So Sudipto, I think if you really look at it last 3 to 4 years, especially after GST we implemented, there has been a lot of changes which has been happening across the logistics network and the infrastructure. Uh, at the same time, we've also seen a few major things happening, especially within pharmaceutical industry. There's a lot of focus on the compliance, a lot of focus on the quality, right? Which is also linked to the logistics, because now people are moving, every company is moving towards the warehouses which are more compliant, the warehouses where we have the facilities which are basically more technologically advanced. Temperature mapping is done properly. So GMP are the good warehousing practices are being followed thoroughly. So this is also changing the entire logistics industry and space for pharmaceutical especially. So what we really observed is one thing is the consolidation happening across the warehouses. That's one observation. The second thing is when we are doing the consolidation, we are moving to the facilities which are far more advanced, which can handle the operations much more efficiently and in a more compliant way in the quality manner. At the same time, one thing which has been interesting is that initially when we wanted to make this transition, we were afraid that this is going to increase the cost substantially. But frankly, if you really look at it, overall experience has been more or less the cost neutral. So while we have been able to improve our quality infrastructure, at the same time the cost has been more or less at the at the same percentage. So we have not seen the major changes in the cost. The reason is, of course, one is when we started consolidating it, I think the many companies are coming together, and which is kind of helping this logistics service providers to create that kind of efficiency by consolidating the similar needs. At the same time, the overall infrastructure in terms of the roads have been improving. The overall infrastructure in terms of the other facilities like the internet availability, the electricity availability, those also have been kind of fairly improving over the period of time. So all these things put together, logistic infrastructure has been kind of has improved substantially. And also one important figure is, if you look at it, 2015, almost 90% of the logistics was unorganized, and today that ratio has now reduced. The organized sector has improved to almost 20-25%, and this has been continuously improving. Right, so organized sector has been improving, which is kind of which clearly indicates that while we are able to create the better capacities, better quality infrastructure, there are more and more companies are moving toward that those organized sector, and this is only possible if this is cost efficient, and at the same time providing the better supply chain efficiencies and the agility. So this is how it has been changing. Very quick comment on the strategic sourcing front. I think we had a good learning during this COVID time, especially for the strategic sourcing. I just want to give one very simple example. So all of us talk about creating a BCP supplier or the alternate supplier, right? For many of our critical materials. Sometimes we don't realize that when we are choosing this BCP supplier, how the location can play a very critical role. So for example, I had one supplier for the material in Maharashtra. Now, the BCP supplier also we somewhere chose in Maharashtra only. So that's what we did. And we were very happy that now, we have two suppliers for the material. Now, during this COVID crisis situation, when the impact was high on Maharashtra and we are not getting labor, we are not we are struggling to get the resources. Both the suppliers were not able to operate, right? So that shows that when we look at strategic sourcing roadmap, I think it's also one of the important things is to look at the location of the supplier as well. There are many other learnings like this. So yes, I think there's a need to look at strategic sourcing in much more holistic way, and which can provide better sustainability to the supply chain. What do you got up? What do you got up?
Gaurav, yeah, it's up to you.
Thank you, Himanshu. A very quick point, I think largely you have covered. Just a quick point from the specifically logistics side. Post the implement, we all have seen the great benefits out of it. So I think a lot of tolls and the time that our delivery agents, the trucks, etc., had to be withhold for getting the approvals, etc., on the toll nakas, etc. So they have drastically come down and improved the efficiency post this entire GST scenario, and this has also led to consolidation of warehouse and hence savings in terms of your warehousing cost, which is very well or clearly substantiated, or the returns are substantiated by consolidation. So I think that is one key from, I think, good step by Government of India, which supports the entire thing. The other good option where I saw one question from Tuhin was, how are we also reducing the logistics cost? So there are few service providers now, so where you have those belts, for pharma you have a lot of this thing manufacturing in Baddi or in Indore, etc. There are service provider who take multiple from multiple organizations shipments, and you don't need to have a full FTL, which is full truckload, and hence your shipment cost reduces for your small volumes drastically. Just one example, while I'm not propagating it or advertising, but take my shipments or take my logistics. So they combine various this thing, logistics or volumes from a place and then consolidate and take it to another location. So that also helps. And there are very innovative ways with which the logistics or the 3PL industry per se is coming up in terms of reduction, and they take your end-to-end load. So you have to just kind of outsource your activities to them. They take your especially the mind space, so that you can focus on your key areas distribution or like your planning, etc. Yeah.
Thank you, Gaurav. I think over the last 44 to 45 minutes, we have been very well speaking about the planning, the logistics, the warehousing, the supply chain design, the use of IT, the use of technologies. I think we have covered almost all of the points, and we also analyzed the various strengths and weaknesses of the pharmaceutical industry as a whole, how the government policies is helping us to achieve our both short-term and long-term goals, and how we can use multiple tools and techniques, both global and indigenous solutions to improve our supply chain. Before I move on to the Q&A session, I think one last question which I have for Mr. Shubhro Jyoti is that how, because we need to really talk about the cost, because I think one of the panelists also mentioned that everything boils down to the ROI, because at the end of the day, the decision makers has to finally ensure that our costs and returns are in line with the budgeted numbers. So in line with the same, my question was basically how you are countering the issues of cost increase, and how can India remain competitive even during this COVID pandemic? And also how the government of India is making an effort to provide relief to the enterprises during this COVID times as well.
Thanks,
Over to
Sudipto. I would summarize all the three questions into three bullets or three actions that the government has taken. That will answer all the three questions, I guess. One is, we all know there has been an interest and the principal moratorium for a period of around 6 months on the loans being serviced by corporates, both, and that is actually really helping on the ground the small entrepreneurs in a big way. And if you are following the news news on the ground. Supreme Court has actually ruled, I think, beginning of September, first week of September, that these loan interest moratorium, such loans will not be declared, these accounts will not be declared as NPAs by the banks. So this is a big step, I would say, and well supported by the Supreme Court. The government has also declared that all the government procurement related payments which are pending for the last 6 months to a year will be immediately released to the suppliers into government procurements. That is also a big boost for the financials for these small and medium enterprises. And on the restructuring point of view, I would say the KV Kamath committee, which government appointed some time back, which is expected. I think they are yet to come out with their recommendations on the post-COVID restructuring. But what I expect, my expectation, I would say, talking on behalf of my colleagues, maybe. Some of the possible recommendations will be conversion of the interests accrued or to be accrued into another line of credit facilities, for example, or maybe extending the moratorium on these or the rescheduling of these payments for a period of maybe 6 months to 2 years or so. So I would say these are short and medium term measures which are helping to release the cost pressures on the enterprises. But from a pharma point of view, the long-term boosters will have to be through the API, the KSMs, the formulation localization efforts, which is the Atmanirbhar Bharat Deepak was talking about, Gaurav was talking about. So those steps government has already declared in the notifications in the month of March and also in July. So those are the steps for the longer term, medium to longer term, I would say, to alleviate the cost pressures. Thank you.
Thank you. So anyone else wants to comment on any other points? Gaurav, Mohit, Himanshu, or otherwise I'll move on to the Q&A part. Okay.
I'd like to add one point on the cost efficiency and strategic procurement and strategic sourcing side, because that's where we built our company in the past 5 years from absolute zero to $100 million company now in terms of our revenue. And what we really analyzed is, whenever a manufacturing organization buys products, 70% of the spend essentially goes into raw materials, right? Then 10, 15, 20% of the spend will go into capex, plant, machinery, expansion, etc. Remaining 5 to 10% of the spend, Sudipto, would be everything else. And this everything else would essentially comprise of 70 to 80% SKUs, comprising of just 5 to 10% of the spend. In terms of number of vendors who are supplying the spend, again, 70 to 80% vendors would essentially be supplying just 5 to 10% spend in the supply chain. So essentially, a lot of manufacturing organization by design would have a long tail end of vendors, and a lot of companies would be telling coming to you and telling consultants like McKinsey, BCG, AT Kearney, Bain, etc. would be coming and telling to consolidate this tail end vendors, because essentially they are just contributing to very minimal percentage of your cost of goods that you're buying. And a very important point Himanshu also mentioned was around consolidation, right? You need to essentially consolidate these spends and bring them under a few aggregators who can aggregate them for you and supply to you in a lot more cost effective way, a lot more consolidated way, a lot more compliant and transparent way, so that GSTs and etc. everything is complied to. And once you consolidate, once you leverage your economies of scale, that is where you essentially gain and be cost competitive. So I think two key words here would be consolidation and cut the tail. Then you become cost effective.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Thank you. So, okay. So what I'll do, I'll just move on and take a few questions. The first question, Mohit, was actually for you. So I think you mentioned about the cost efficiency. So Trishula actually wants to know how companies like Moglix are helping to reduce cost and complexity in the pharma supply chain. And if you can give us one or two examples.
Yeah,
to
thanks,
just highlight?
Trisha, and thanks, Sudipto, for the question. I would not like to answer any company-specific question and be too much of marketing pitch. It was more of a farmer discussion. She should connect with me on an offline manner. I'd love to take her through Moglik's case studies and how we really do it on the ground.
Sure.
Yeah.
Thank you. So I'll go to the next question, which is open to all. There is no specific name. The question is that how can India pharma supply chain become superior to, let's say, a Chinese supply chain? I think we did answer to some extent. Gaurav and Shuro did mention about all these points. But if any one of the panelists can, take up this question and answer.
So if I can quickly add, while I mentioned briefly, but very quickly, I think Indian pharma and specifically Indian pharma supply chain, the way the off-patent pipeline is coming, we can look at in terms of quick filings, etc. And in terms of supply chain, we can also, the way we are enabled, digitally enabled, and the organization can be supported with more data-driven decisions, be it on your demand planning, be it on the sides of your supply planning. The way SNOP is done is entirely these days done on a IBP platform, which can be internal, external, but the supply chain, especially Indian supply chain, gives you a lot of reliability, transparency to the stakeholders, and quick decision making. All, I think these 3-4 factors, the velocity of driving your entire manufacturing and logistics, all these things can together collaborate, and they are, I would say, even today they are supporting us to kind of lead as compared to other supply chains or other geographies or other markets, and that's why you see Indian pharma lead the way globally also. So yeah.
Thank you. I think probably we don't have much time, so we'll have time for one last question, again, open for all the panelists. So I think what are the 3 top priorities? So if we can name just 1, 2, 3 top priorities for any pharmaceutical organization to ensure that India becomes a global pharma destination. If anyone from the from the panelists can just come in and summarize maybe in 3 bullet points.
So if anyone wants to go, or I can maybe make 1 or 2 points, and others can please add.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah,
think,
please go ahead.
yeah, I think one is the talent mindset. That is something which I think Indian pharma and the Indian supply chain has been able to attract overall as an industry. Great talents from various B schools or various facets of society. We are able to get the right talent, and when the right talent is there, they will keep kind of churning the right data, right ideas, and bringing forth the transformation journey. Second, this transformation journey is also enabled by the IT and digital, which I just spoke of. So I think 2 key enablements or 2 quick top of my mind priorities is the talent mindset, which is we the people, all of us, and second is the technology adoption, which is very key.
Sudipto, to add your 3 bullets point is one of the competitive and technological changes in the pharmaceutical industry, which is must needed. From powerful new drug chemistries to the innovative R&D partnership is required. And third is marketing plan and reshaping our business strategies in terms of the pharmaceutical and biotechnology space where we are, competing to the world. These are the 3 top priorities, and I hope many of the companies are, searching the ways to increase the productivity, decrease the cost, develop the new treatment and the modalities. But these are the 3 top strategic, requirement rightly currently India pharmaceutical industry should have. Thank you.
Well, Sudipta, if I may contribute, I'll talk about only one, okay, and which is a big pain point for India today is the confidence. Okay, we see so many data integrity issues, so many 483s happening in India, even though India is the source or a hub for global sourcing today. So that is where every company needs to invest in terms of driving compliance on the ground with each and every resource, I would say. And there, digital obviously plays a big role, moving out of copybook signatures to e-signatures or e-BPRs, e-batch records, and all. It's all about the factory of the future concept, okay, where we move out of the physical documents to electronic batch records and iPad driven approval processes. Anybody can approve a batch sitting at home also, for example, when the QC analysis happens. So I think investment in digital is the key, and any company coming into India for investment is going to do that. It is happening today. But on the ground, we Indians, we are talented lot. We are a fantastic pool of talents, our youngsters and students, and who are going to be, driving their career tomorrow in pharmaceuticals and all. But we as leaders, we need to drive compliance and that change of mindset of shortcuts or a chalta hai kind of stuff, which is actually impacting to a great extent India's, name and fame amongst global players. That is where we need to invest in a big way.
Sure. Thank you. I think it's already 7:30 and we are beyond the permitted time. I think we have been speaking for the last 1.5 hours. I think we all need something to drink to quench our thirst. So I would like to thank all of the panelists here, Shubhra Jyoti, Gaurav Arora, Gaurav Bhatia, Himanshu Malu, and Mohit Guliani as well. For this enriching discussion. So this kind of topic basically we can basically continue speaking for hours and hours into the night as well. But for the want of time, I once again thank you each and everyone. And I also thank the organizers and the sponsors and Namrata as well for this. Thank you all.
Thank you, esteemed panelists, for such a great discussion. Thank you, top leaders and delegates, for making this rich discussion and taking out your valuable time during the day. Hope you all will be able to carry the thoughts of the day to build robust roadmap. Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank
very
you.
much.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye. Take care. Bye.
Yeah, thanks everyone. Bye bye.